Right, so I have a topic here called out-of-home standards and the impression multiplier, which is just a really long-winded way of saying I'm going to talk to you about the new impression multiplier metric that we have built at Move. This metric has been built in conjunction with the Out-of-Home Futures Council and the Move members, and we'll... Am I not on?
Oh, you got to turn yours.
I did turn it on. I'm in tech. I know how things work. I might have turned it off. One button. So what I'm here to talk to you today about is the new impression multiplier metric that we've built in conjunction with the Outdoor Futures Council and the Move members to provide some consistency across the out-of-home formats when it comes to putting those 1, 2, 3 people in front of the sign, or as we heard in the previous session, it may be less than one person when a sign goes through. I think to start with it, the basis of this measurement is the current Move audience system. And Move, since it launched in 2010, has measured attention. We didn't call it attention back then, we've called it likelihood to see. But we have measured basic attention in the audience data since Move launched. And how we do that is, first of all, we calculate when the sign is viewable to the audience. So this is about when the advertising is on the screen and the audience has the opportunity to see it. And that can vary by the size of the sign. Bigger signs will be seen from further away, and that's one of the things I'll talk more about later is, just the size of a screen can have an impact. But also, where's the audience in relation to that? What are they travelling by? Are they walking past the sign? Are they driving past the sign? That's all going to change how long they're dwelling in front of the sign, and therefore the potential that they will look at the sign. Then we also take into account, orientation and those factors to determine exactly where the audience is in relation to the sign. And then we go the step further and say, well, this is the potential audience, the realistic opportunity to see the sign, but how many of the people are actually looking at the screen? What is the attention they're paying? And this is where we bring in the eye tracking data based on the size of the sign, the environment, the audience mode, to say what percentage of the people who had the opportunity to see the sign are actually looking at the sign on average. And that's when we put those two together to make the LTS. We take the realistic opportunity to see, apply the visibility factor, and report just those that are looking in the likelihood to see. So Move's audience data that is underpinning the impression multiplier I'm about to show you is, I'll click the button, is providing that the advertising is viewable and that the audience is looking. Basic attention is being measured in the likelihood to see, and the likelihood to see underpins the impression multiplier. So let's talk about the impression multiplier. Impression multiplier is important. I think everyone here would be aware that out-of-home is a one-to-many. When you're in front of it, when an ad plays, there may be more than one person in front of the screen. So to calculate how many people in front of the screen, we've put together a formula which you can see on the screen at the moment. On this screen. We're using Move 1.5's 100% LTS impressions, which means all the impressions that are available on the screen that week. And then, working with the Outdoor Futures Council and the Move members, we've developed a series of profiles, hourly profiles, for each hour of the week, 168 hours in total, that we use across different environments to develop where the audience is, or to calculate how much the audience is in any particular hour. And then, I knew I was going to trip over the chairs, so I kept moving around. And then, using the ad play length, working out how much of that audience is applicable to a single ad play. So you can see here is the formula on the screen. If we had 100, I'll do my maths simply. If we had 6,000 impressions in an hour in total, and there were 60 ad plays, then each impression is going to have 1/60th of that, or 100 impressions. That is the impression multiplier formula. At the moment, in Move 1.5, in the moment we have developed impression multiplier metrics across these three environments: retail, roadside, and station environments. In developing these profiles, which I'll show some of them in a second, we have 14 in total. In the roadside environment, we have 4 based on traffic counts, covering inbound, outbound, non-directional roads, and CBDs, which are a little bit different. In the retail environment, we have 5 based on the centre type, and in the public transport, in the station space public transport, we have 5 based on the markets as we travel a little bit differently in public transport across each of the cap cities. Mobile has been used to develop the profiles for the retail and stations, whilst roadside is predominantly driven by the traffic count information that we have available to us. Now, I have to apologise to you all, and you're probably not wondering why I'm apologising to you, but I hope to stand on stage right now and say those are actually in the SSPs at this point in time. They exist, we've developed them, members have looked at them, they're ready to go, but we've just had a little bit of an admin that we still need to sort out, and in the coming weeks you will see these available in the industry. In terms of the other formats that we measure within Move, or we'll measure in Move 2.0, they will come in the coming months and across the course of the year, and we hope to have all of them in by the end of the year for all formats. In terms of the hourly profiles, and you can see on the screen here the inbound for roadside at the moment. On the right-hand side, you can see by day of the week what percentage of the audience is interacting across the total week on that particular day, and then the line chart is breaking each of the day is out by the 24 hours of the day. And I don't think it comes as any surprise that a sign that is inbound to a CBD has a peak in the morning where people are commuting, taking children to school, heading off to work. And then in the afternoon, that peak is not as strong as it is in the morning. And that is the profile that is being used behind any sign that is an inbound sign in the impression multiplier. In terms of the profile for an outbound, you can see here, it flips over and you have the peak in the afternoon, and that probably comes as no surprise. On the weekends, the peaks are usually later in the morning. The other thing you might be able to see there slightly is that Thursday and Friday have slightly higher peaks, and that is because not everything's about travelling for work. In fact, 16% of trips today are only commuting to work. The other 84% are for social and recreational, shopping, all sorts of different reasons. And therefore, you know, you can start to see peaks on the Thursday night, with Thursday night shopping being a bit stronger, and Friday as we start to socialise a bit more than we do other nights of the week. So all of that's being built into these profiles and picking up the travel across the week. When we move forward to next year and Move 2.0 launches, the impression multiplier will become even more granular. We have the opportunity with Move 2.0 to have more granular profiles because we're measuring all signs individually for 365 days of the year with hourly audiences. It's a huge task and been started in 2021, and when we have that data, you'll start to see things like those hourly profiles that we have for common at the moment will actually be individual to each sign, and they will vary from week to week. So when we start to look at some of the data in Move now, and this is the survey that we're undertaking in Move, where we're tracking people second by second with a device indoors and outdoors and plotting out their data, we can see that 82% of the population left home today for one or more reasons, and they made on average 4.9 trips while they were doing it. And so as we have that across each and every week, we will start to see different profiles on Monday this week versus Monday last week and the next week. So that's the impression multiplier. Before I move on, does anyone have any questions at the moment on that? I want to save them to the end.
There's one over here.
Oh, there's a hand. Who wants to be first?
Yeah, I'll follow up. So as the reliability of mobility data degrades over time, thanks to privacy, implementation of privacy laws,
Yep.
Where are you moving to get your source of mobility data?
So mobile data is a part, well, it's a good question. First of all, we don't rely on mobile data to be the source of our mobility data. And Move is a model, and in Move 2.0 it becomes a measured model, which means we're putting more emphasis on count information to control the audience's data. Because the first thing I suppose is, as you say, there's going to be a degradation potentially of mobile data, but even if I'm trying to measure, and I am trying to measure, an individual sign's location, I can't rely on mobile data to do it. So if I wanted to measure this screen right here, right now, I couldn't rely on the signals that your mobile phone's putting out to tell me how many people are here in front of this sign. So we have a model that's using our own survey, which then is tracking people, so we're recruiting people. They have a device that not only tracks their GPS, but also has a gyroscope, barometer, and a whole range of other things, so that when they move from outdoors to indoors, we have them. We then layer on top of that a complete picture of the transport network, so all of a sudden I know where you are. I'm not saying you're inside the zone. I actually know what roads you're on or what part of the shopping centre you're walking through. So then we have the ability to start to use that as our audience movements. Where mobile is helpful for us is not trying to provide the audience volume, but at a macro level to talk about profiles across the day, it starts to help give us a bit more granularity there. If that data degrades, then we are left with what do we know, and we'll find another source to give it. But we're not trying to use a small portion of the mobile data. We're trying to use as big a portion as we can to put profiles across, or geographical separations. So how many people that were in this suburb today went to another suburb. So keep it at a broad level rather than trying to bring it back to a small micro point, because it can't do that.
How big's your panel?
In the recruitment, the establishment survey that we've run 5,000 over the last 12 months, and that will be the data we have at launch, and we will add more to that panel as we go forward.
So my question is, when we think about programmatic normally, right, we think that we are able to measure everything in terms of an audience approach. You think about Nielsen, Ipsos, etc. When we think about Move, right, it's obviously based on who is subscribed to Move within the actual measurement approach.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at impression multipliers for retail, roadside, etc., for the providers that aren't actually subscribed to Move, how does the impression multiplier work for them?
Well, I mean, we're providing data. So first thing I'll say is those that aren't subscribed becoming a smaller and smaller group all the time. So since we started development of Move 2.0, our membership's grown from 12 to 30 companies. So there are 30 companies that are going to have Move 2.0 measurement. Those that are left are obviously in the smaller group. They can be using that formula and what have you, but they can't be having Move data because we're not measuring their signs. They haven't given us the information about their signs in order to be able to measure them. So for me to measure a sign and Move, I need to know its exact location, its exact size, what's its ad play length and all of that. If they haven't shared that, I can't create that audience. Remy.
So the Move data is very precise, but how often is it refreshed?
At the moment, Move.
Graham, could you just repeat the question?
Oh, sorry. Remy asked how often is the data refreshed. So in terms of Move itself, the audience model is set each year. In terms of Move 2.0, we're hoping to reset the audience model every 3 months. Computers are faster and we can process more information. In terms of the signs though, the signs themselves are refreshed every month. So if there is a change to site classification or what have you, we change. That obviously produces new audience numbers and we produce those and release them every month for all the sign changes. So the impression multiplier file will actually be released on a monthly basis, and that will take into account not just any audience changes, but also the signs that this month are no longer programmatically traded or actually are being traded programmatically this month. So it'll account for avails changes as well. All right. Any more questions before I move on?
One over here.
Oh.
Hi, I'm from Unmade. I'm just wondering when Move 2.0 is set to launch.
When is Move 2.0 set to launch? 2024.
Yes, 2024?
2024.
Any month?
Any month? No, I haven't got. You won't get. No, I'm not going to commit to any. It'll be the first half of 2024.
Great, thank you.
All right. So that's impression multiplier. I'm going to move on. So you now have that impression multiplier available to you in the coming weeks to then work with Trade Programmatic, and that's going to make it easier to do that. But I suppose there's a bit of a setup for the next session, but also just my own personal experience is that I'm going to put a slide up here that says not all impressions are equal. Now, clearly out-of-home screens are different to phones and computers and all the rest of it, but within out-of-home itself, there is a multitude of environments and sizes that you can be buying. All impressions are not equal. First thing I would say about that is think about the context of what you're buying. You're buying big screens, small screens, you're buying roadside, you're buying maybe proximity, the subtlety of putting an electronic car on a EV charging station, and even just the time of day that you're executing these campaigns. So the contextual relevancy of out of home is important. There are 9,000 screens available programmatically today in out-of-home space across a wide range of different environments. Just keep in mind the context of what you're buying and don't just treat all screens as equal. And the other reason I say don't treat all screens as equal is impact. We know from the neuroscience research that we've undertaken that different formats have different levels of impact. And this impact was measured using neuroscience and neuroinsight, where we were measuring how long people, oh, not how long, we were measuring in a glance how strong and how frequently peaks in memory encoding and emotional intensity occurred in the brain. And from programmatics, great, because we know digital has an X factor. But also we have within the formats, and if you click the button and it will work, it does, we have within the toolkit we've just released a slide that looks like this, which shows you how each of the formats on average is delivering impact. Big and small are going to have different impact within the big screen, small screens are going to have different impact within each of the formats, but this is the format average. And you can start to see stronger impact for digital screens across the top and the level of relative reach they achieve in a campaign sense across the bottom. And you can start to see the differences in the internal and the roadside environments when it comes to impact. If we were to overlay on that some of the place-based environments, which we have collected impact scores, you would see a different level of impact occurring again. So just keep in mind that all screens are not equal. So to wrap up, is that the audience data that underpins the impression multiplier is attention-based measures. We have measured basic attention. The sign is viewable, or the advertising is viewable as well, and people are paying attention to it. The impression multiplier has been developed, and we have it for hourly impressions, or not hour, individual play impressions that differ by hour across the week for the retail, roadside and station environments. And when you're looking to use that and incorporate into campaigns, just keep in mind that there is some context and impact and other things as well that you may want to consider in terms of data points that you may want to consider when you execute a campaign. And the next session will talk more about that. So before I wrap up, any final questions? I love a question. Thank you.
Just that final approach with the measurement here for impact. Is there any work done in terms of volume of small format impacts compared to a billboard? So if you had multiple small formats together?
Multiple small, so it would, no, so we've measured the impact of an individual screen. So we haven't said in combination how do they work. It's actually a study that, part of that study or part of answering that question is something that NeuroInsight and the OMA are going to look to answer this year. But obviously if I bought a whole heap of those and a few of those, what's the answer? I don't know. Because it's probably more an answer of to reach and frequency than it is a question of screens.
What is the impact actually?
What is the impact?
Yeah, is it based on attention?
No, it's based on neuroscience.
Okay.
And so the neuroscience study involved about 900 different signs and a couple of thousand creative executions. And the respondent was actually being recorded while they're looking at these experiences like a drive to work or a walk through a shopping centre, what they were looking at. And when they were looking at the signs, they would then record how much long-term memory encoding and emotional intensity was occurring while they were watching in that glance. And then that's just so the impact is just a combination of those to say what is the strength of and frequency of, what is the strength of the long-term memory encoding, what is the strength of the emotional intensity, and then multiply that by the frequency within that occurred. And that created a score. And what we see is the scores are different across formats.
Are there any plans for this impression multiplier to support other formats like office buildings and stations?
Yes, which is sort of I briefly touched on there. So we don't measure those formats in Move at the moment. They are being measured in Move 2.0. So we are learning, and Move 2.0, whilst it's coming out and being launched next year, it's actually in its stages of working through different iterations at the moment. And so we're learning a lot about the measurement of those formats right now. We won't be able to get down to individual weeks are different, but we believe that we've got probably enough information coming over the coming months to be able to say what is the average typical week for an office format in this particular environment, and then generate the impression multiplier similar to what we have in the current Move system for that. So yes, we hope to do that work across this year and have all of them out this year. Earlier would be great, but I've got a little bit of a side project called Move 2.0 going at the moment. No one laughed at that. You obviously don't know how big it is. All right. I'd love to stay on stage a bit longer, but I suppose I'll get off unless anyone's got any more questions. No? Oh. We might be running ahead of time.
We are. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.